to all of you who have joined us here this evening for today's Pulse lecture on ICU care in COVID-19. My name is Anand Zekraya. I work in the Department of Medicine, and I would like to introduce all of you to the Pulse lecture series. Some of you may have attended previous ones. Sometimes you may be the first time. This morning I was talking to various doctors working in different parts of India in the mission hospitals, and I was impressed by the diversity of situations and problems that people are facing in COVID care. Today morning in the conversation with Dr. George Matthew, who works in Jharkhand, he was emphasizing, as a busy surgeon who is running COVID care in his hospital, the need for up-to-date, concise and practical information on a periodic basis. And he was also raising the importance of today's topic on ICU care. Should they intubate patients? Do they need NIV? He said, I am not trained in NIV, and that we need clarity on these issues, and we need training materials and courses for this kind of work. The Pulse Lecture series is really to address this gap, to circulate the information both within CMC, in the mission network and beyond, to provide up-to-date, accurate and practical information and feasible interventions in different settings across the country. We have two of my students who are going to chair and present today. Both of them are bright, academic, intensivists, clinically sharp, keen to share what they know, sensitive to their patients and their families. Pratish works in the surgical ICU and Binila in the medical ICU. I'm really proud to introduce both of them to you, and I'm going to ask Pratish to introduce Binila for you.
Thank you, sir. The intensive care management of patients presents various challenges during this pandemic. There are variations in management related to ventilatory strategies. There are challenges related to treating patients with PPEs. There are differences in resuscitating patients as opposed to the normal intensive care patients. Communication is a challenge. There are resource limitations. There's a lack of evidence to do a lot of therapies, and that's where experience comes in. And today we have a very experienced intensivist in Binila. Dr. Binila Chako is professor of one of the professors of critical care and working in medical ICU. She's done her internal medicine from here and her DM critical care from here. She's completed her critical training in critical care training in Australia as well. And she is part of the research committee of the Indian Society of Critical Care Medicine. She has a passion for teaching and quality and research work, and she's the Deputy Director of Quality here at CMC. And therefore, what we're going to get is a quality lecture from her, and she will share part of her experience leading the medical ICU forward over the last many months. And I'm sure we'll get a lot of practical points that will be useful to all of us. Over to you, Binila.
Thanks, Pratish, for those kind words. Good evening to everyone. I'd like to thank Dr. Anand for inviting me to give this talk, and I bring you greetings from the Department of Medical ICU here at CMC Vellore. I've titled my talk Evolution to Current Practice, and I thought I would just take you through in the next 45 minutes our story about how we got ready to handle COVID in the ICU, and then I'll take you through an overview of the management of the critically ill COVID patient. So I'm just taking you back to end of Feb, March 2020, when we kind of knew that we had to start getting ready to handle cases with COVID. And the faculty, the doctors, nurses, therapists, we all sat down together, and our main focus was to make sure that our staff were safe, they felt protected, And we also knew that there were a lot of practices which needed to be changed. So gone were the days where we could wear our normal clothes and walk into the ICU. And we had to kind of change people's mindset. We had to kind of encourage them to wear scrubs. We made scrubs the new in thing, the new fashion. And there was a genuine concern that people did not want to take their work clothes home. And we're very grateful to the administration for having provided us with scrubs of different sizes, all of which were actually laundered here in the hospital after every shift. All of us were provided with N95 masks as well. Now, just showing you the importance of teamwork in a pandemic situation, which actually instills a lot of fear. And you can see here our registrars. This is very, very early on, even before our cases came in. This was around the time that the lockdown had set in, and there was a shortage and a difficulty in procuring sufficient number of PPE. So our registrars here were actually making visors. You can see that these are just made out of transparency sheets which were fitted onto surgical caps, and we used this for about a month, I would say, till we actually got proper goggles and visors to use in the ICU. This is what we used, and it really was a team building exercise for all of us. And you can see here, this is actually how we all were dressed for at least a month with the surgical gowns. The headgear that you see was actually made from the covering of the instrument trays. So we just made a hole in it for the face and put the visors on top of it and shoe covers. So that is how we looked in the month of April till we actually got our hazmat suits, which by God's grace are now far more comfortable than what it used to be. So we've come a long way from April. This is actually, so when you try to get your ICU ready, you have to think of changes which have to happen to your ICU. So donning area, this is actually our entrance. Those of you who visited MICU know it's a very small area. This is the staff entrance, and this is actually where we started our donning area initially. And then as the numbers, grew, and we had a lot of patients who were coming in, we realized we needed a bigger donning area to kind of cater to the number of the staff. And we also realized that there were a lot of staff from other areas who came in to help us. And hence it's very important that we, instructions on how to carefully don are put up so that people can feel safe at all times. So this was put up in every donning area in all ICUs. We also kind of made little cubby holes and containers for staff to keep their goggles, which they used during the shift, so that they could use it till it ran out, because we didn't really have surplus to use one goggle every day. One little tip to take note of is don't clean your goggles with Dakins. It absolutely destroys the goggles, but use surgical spirit to clean your goggles and before putting it into the container. And you can see here, I don't know whether you can see in that there's some highlighted colors here on the side where you've got actually doctors, nurses, and stickers which are here to help people identify themselves along with their names as to what staff they were. Doffing area has to be, you need to take a lot more care in the doffing area. So doffing areas have to be much larger. You need to make sure, because this is one area where there's a high risk of contamination to yourself, and adequate space should be there. And we were very grateful to the administration for having provided us with portable showers so that the staff could bathe before they went back home. So these are all the small little tidbits that were done by the administration, which kind of added to our sense of security and confidence in working in a high stress area with COVID around, and it gave confidence to our family members as well. Now, there's always this concept about air conditioning and COVID. Can you use air conditioning in a COVID area? Because generally cold air tends to break down the COVID droplets and makes it travel further distances with the AC airflow. If you look at the WHO recommendations, they say that if you have a heated, ventilated air conditioning unit with at least 12 air exchanges every hour, That is what is ideal for an ICU area. So you can see here, the bottom line is you must make sure that there is no recirculation of air. The more recirculation there is, the higher the risk of occupational risk to the healthcare workers within the unit. So we also realize at this point of time, in MICU and medical HDU, we have 4 isolation rooms which have separate air handling units, but the rest of the ICU has a common air handling unit. There is recirculation of air, and so we did realize that changes had to be made to our ICU to kind of increase the safety. So this is what was actually done here. We created negative pressure rooms. Our ICUs were converted. This is actually a new ICU called the ST ICU, where there's a negative pressure, almost like an exhaust, which is kind of created in the air handling unit with HEPA filters incorporated in the air handling unit to ensure that we have at least 12 air exchanges every hour. We also, in order to make patients feel safe, so it's not just the staff safety, a patient comes into the ICU, they are also very scared. They don't want to be in contact with patients who are positive. So when suspect patients come, it's important to keep them in an isolated area, in a separate room with a separate air handling unit. That is something which needs to be taken note of. So while all this was happening, there was a lot of, thankfully, we had time to kind of prepare. We actually set in a lot of protocols and trained our staff, doctors, nurses, and therapists in donning, doffing. We actually got them involved in making some videos because that improved their participation. We also laid down some protocols for, dangerous procedures where there's a risk of aerosol generation, for intubation, CPR. In COVID, we actually kind of trained a lot of healthcare practitioners across the hospital in order to make sure everyone was safe in the COVID time, and also in sampling. So there was a lot of training which happened for healthcare workers. In addition, some important aspects that we had to train our housekeeping attendants also in cleaning and disinfection of the area. So there are, protocols which were laid out by a hospital infection control committee where, surfaces had to be cleaned every 4 hours with Dakin solution, and reusable items and computers, keyboards had to be cleaned with isopropyl alcohol. Now there are standard, all these protocols are available in case people want to know more about them. It is available on the CMC internet, and you can access it by just contacting the staff training department. So we had to train our housekeeping attendants. So this is actually one of our housekeeping attendants who is here. You will not know him from a doctor or a nurse. And so that's how everyone actually felt very safe, and they felt they felt like part of the team. They didn't feel different. So that helped in improving our working environment. Also, we trained them in the waste management, and we taught them how to triple bag the waste, and was taken in a closed container for incineration. So this is exactly what we trained, how we managed to train our healthcare professionals and prepare them for the pandemic which is going to hit us. So all of us were ready. So these are our enthusiastic registrars, ready and waiting for the COVID cases to come in. And on the 2nd of April, we got our first case. And everyone kept on asking us, how did you manage and how were the things? And we were like, okay, we just have an experience of one patient and that's it. And we were waiting for the patients to come in, and they didn't come in, and they were very slow. But when it hit us, it really hit us hard. So you can see in the month of April, we had 2 patients who came in, and then over the past few months, we've had, 80, 130, 156 patients coming in, and in total we've had about 450 to date who've actually come into the medical ICU. Now there are several other ICUs which have opened up. There is a pulmonary HDU which is taking care of HDU kind of patients, and AICU which has also got another 11 beds. So in total we've got about 75 beds taking care of COVID, critically ill COVID patients. So given these big numbers which hit us, we had to look at surge spaces, and that's where extra spaces were identified, extra ICU spaces were identified, extra beds were identified. Additionally, we also focused on triaging, on how to actually triage our patients and to decide whether the patient needed ICU. The second step was to decide whether there were any potentially unsalvageable factors that precluded ICU admission. And the third step was to set up a priority list based on salvageability. So this priority list was set up by Dr. Anand Zak, and we use this. It's not just an age-based criteria, but it's putting in together comorbidities and functional status to make a decision on the priority for ICU care, as whether it's a high, moderate, or a low priority. Now, communication with patient relatives in ICU is very, very challenging. They are on the waiting for a phone call. They're not sitting outside. You can't just call them. There's this wonderful article which is written by one of our registrars in ICU, The Phone of Life and Death, Thoughts from a Frontline Caregiver. And when you read that article, you'll realize the stress that goes in a registrar's mind as they actually call families to give them bad news or to tell them a report. They're waiting in anticipation. So these are all challenges that all of us will face in terms of communication.